1 minute, please. Yeah. Yeah, I hear you now well.
Okay, perfect. Well, we have about 10 minutes before.
Yeah, I just wanted to check that all the technology, it's right, not to waste time after.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I'll make a start again in about 10 minutes time, and then we'll be ready to go.
No problem. So I will leave now or what?
We can just mute or.
Okay, no problem. Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Bye. See you. Bye.
Thank you. With us, yes. Hello. We'll be pleased to make a start. So thank you very much for joining us today at the Manchester School of Architecture. Today we're part of the Urban Research Lecture syllabus for the Masters in Architecture and Urbanism. I'll start by just introducing you with a brief biography, and then the floor will be yours. So Dr. Ayman Tabani is a researcher and a second-generation architect in Dr. Tabani Architects, an architecture and engineering office founded in Nazareth in the 1960s by his father, Dr. Mahmoud Tabani. Ayman, together with his brother, an engineer named Ashraf, leads the studio. During the last 2 decades, Ayman has been the leading architectural agenda of the practice, building an extensive curriculum in the design of public buildings. Ayman's work focuses on developing integrated design processes and models at the intersection of ecology, computation, and design. His design research concentrates on the implementation of computational methods for design and fabrication of ecological architecture and urban design. Departing from the city understood as a dynamic, complex system, his work focuses on the development of dynamic system models for cities and how the development of these systems influences the architectural discourse at the scale of the urban block. Ayman Tabani co-founded with Enriqueta Yabres Tabani Architects in 2017. The London-based design studio is built on the legacy brought by both partners after 2 decades of experience in the field. So today, Dr. Ayman will be giving us a talk titled Productive Ecologies in Architecture and Urban Design. It's a pleasure to have you, and the floor is now yours, Ayman. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Simon, and good morning for everyone. So let me share. Let's see if how I can share here. Desktop. Okay. So do you see my screen?
Yes, we see it. That's perfect.
Actually, I don't see anybody of you, just I see names, but it's okay. No problem. So again, thank you, Simon, very much for that. And thank you for inviting me to give this lecture. I try to keep on time, not to make it too long. So I am going to be talking about productive ecologies in architecture and urban design, as the title says in the slides. Productive ecologies, it's an approach to design that is based on principles of ecological intelligence. Now, if we want to just to give a little background about the concept of intelligence, actually it's strongly debated, this concept. But my understanding of ecological intelligence in design is that it's the knowledge and the awareness that design has a serious impact on the planet and its inhabitants. So an impact that is much beyond our immediate reach. So by understanding the interaction between organism and environments, which actually is what we call the science of ecology, it allows us to design resilience and adaptable artifacts, including architectural structures and urban cities and urban systems and cities and blocks and super blocks and so on. So adapting this approach that is called productive ecologies requires an interdisciplinary design research that is situated on the overlapping areas between design ecology and computational ecology. So this is just a brief introduction to what I'm going to say today. So these ecological design principles that I trying to adapt from ecology, it's present a radical proposal for design in the architecture disciplines. It's a new approach, how it's written by Soleri, stated by Soleri in the slides. It's an approach of reformulation rather than reformation in the design discipline. So first, I'd like to tell you about why I think we need a new way of design thinking about architecture and cities. Then I'll show you the investigation and exploration of the potentiality by employing this ecological thinking in design. Next, I will present the computation design model for ecological superblock research that I conducted at the AA. And after that, I'm going to show the design experiment by utilizing these computational design models. Then I'm going to show professional project from our practice to show that the overlapping areas between practice and academic research. The first project performed as an ecological and environmental device that tried to improve the environmental production. And finally, I present another professional project. It's called Sea of Galilee. It's a hotel and resorts that employ the concept and the principles of symbiosis as an ecological principle for the design. So, ecologically, natural events are interconnected, and a change in one part of the system can change the other parts. This is the basic definition that we can understand ecology. So we view architecture as an existential question that exceeds its discipline limits. So it involves the entire planet as a whole ecosystem, and the design emerges by ecological interaction and dynamics. So in this approach, we conceive each design project as a complex dynamic system, and its morphology, it's determined by these ecological and metabolic processes, which include the environment and the climate. So based on this view, the focus of the design is on relationships, and it's important to emphasize this term, relationships and processes, not on style and form. So basically our research focuses on how design can address and tackle environmental and ecological emergency, and how cities can cope with the enormous challenges that humanity is facing today. Among these challenges, I identified 4 that pose the greatest threat. The first one is the population growth. We all know that cities around the world have seen unprecedented rapid increases in population. Although they occupy just about 2 to 3% of the Earth's surface, they still account for 60 to 80% of global energy consumption and 70% of carbon emissions. So, and about 70% of the world's natural resources consumption. Cities have enormous ecological footprints and complex, powerful, and formidable effect on the whole ecosystems. So this massive demand for urban system and infrastructure poses a significant challenge for the design and the urban design. Next is the climate change. Okay, all of us, we know that Earth's climate has changed throughout history, but what is distinguished this current climate change is that there is a wide agreement that humans are the leading cause of the change. And the city is identified as the key driver of climate change. So the design of the city become crucial here on this point. So this effect of the cities on the climate is through the anthropogenic emissions and the consumption and the metabolism in cities. Another serious problem is the biodiversity loss, which is attributed mainly like climate to human activity and climate change. Scientists have argued that biodiversity loss poses the greatest threat in humanity. The recent reports from UN World Bank concluded that human society is in danger from the accelerating decline of Earth's natural life support system, what is called, with 1 million of species at risk of extinction and the collapse of the whole natural system. So, and I think, of course, if natural system collapse, it would have a catastrophic consequences in humanity. So the next problem, it's what is called the carrying capacity and the resources depletion. Basically, resources are not unlimited, and there are indeed constraints on the amount of food that Earth can produce. Just as Malthus argued more than 200 years ago, who introduced the concept of carrying capacity. So ecological and biologically carrying capacity is defined as the number of individual that a particular habitat or environment can support. If the population grows too large, it may begin to exceed the environment's carrying capacity and degrade available habitat. Therefore, this concept, the carrying capacity, is of crucial importance in the process of the design of human habitat. I brought these slides just to show that what we can learn from history. We can see here the ruin of ancient Indus Valley civilization city. Its name is Mohenjo-Daro. It's an example to the world, to us, that what could happen when culture cannot adapt and cannot downsize to fit its environmental production. According to many research studies, it was built about 5,000 years ago and disappeared after 2,000 years. There is evidence that environmental change was one of the main factors of the Indus Valley civilization collapse. So this is a very good lesson that we can learn from this. So taking all of these challenges into consideration, we view this fragility of the planet and this challenging reality of environment emergency actually not as a problem that require a technical improvement and reformation of conventional solution. Some of us, we call it sustainability or whatever things that we are using now. We're trying to improve the situation. It's not the way to be done, in my view. But as an opportunity, it's opportunity for ecological design innovation and reformulation. I use this word again, reformulation. So the suggested design model that I am suggesting here is founded on the logic that human habitation is a complex system or ecosystem that is embedded in its own natural and cultural context. And actually its form, morphology, this is what is important for us as a designer, architects. We form giving. So this morphology is determined by ecological and metabolic processes, not with inspiration and the form and artistic and aesthetics concepts. So these processes and metabolic processes, they drive and inform the design and the form of the morphology. And this morphology, because it's driven by these processes, must or should be capable of adapting to change. And this is important, adapting. In this respect, unlike natural systems, cities are systems that composed of a set of interacting subsystems with hierarchical organization. Actually, this understanding, cities as systems, cities as ecosystems, cities as a complex system, exhibit a dynamic and evolving nature of cities and provide a better understanding of the principles of urban system and their interaction with the environmental system and the climate system. This includes the urban form, human actions, and how this inform the architecture morphology of the urban system. In these slides, I tried to show a comparison between a coral reef that its form and colors are driven by these processes and the city in terms of energy and material flows. We can model this, we can give numbers to this, and we can understand the environment by numbers. And this is our understanding of the environment. We are going to build inside the environment, to embed our artifact there. So understanding of the environmental system, it's the basic foundation for the design process. So the design research that I'm showing is part of an academic research. This was conducted at MTech at the AA under the supervision of Dr. Michael Weinstock, a well-known figure and seminal figure in the field. The ambition of the research was to design ecological superblock composed of productive surfaces that produce agriculture and generate energy and collect and distribute water. All these surfaces are combined with different ways of occupying an urban space. And because that I put the Machu Picchu, that it's what it's a model or inspiration, we can use it here, but also it was productive. It was productive settlement. In this respect, the definition of the superblock can be used to indicate various things, including large neighborhood block or a whole neighborhood or an urban settlement or even city. As special entities, superblocks exist between architecture and the city, and actually similar to cities of Middle Ages, for example, superblocks can function as independent or semi-independent social, economic, and ecological entities. So to achieve this, I identified the 3 domains that can be investigated in order to facilitate the formulation of the theoretical background needed to devise a design model and method. These domains are the urban, ecology, and computation, how you see in this slide. In the urban field, urban domain, to establish my argument in this field, I investigated idealized cities that were envisioned during the last century and were founded on ecological principles. So I identified 2 seminal proposals, the decentralized city by Hilbersheimer, 1943, and Slaurellin Ecology, 1969. Both viewed the city, each in his own way, as a functioning organism and a dynamic organism model that can be adapted to different conditions. Basically, they were pioneering the integration of ecological thinking in design, but actually they didn't have the tools or the skills that wasn't available for them, the computational power that we have today. So they put the principles, but they didn't compute it. And this could be our contribution to the research. In Hilbersheimer's proposal, he adopted a holistic approach toward the integration of agriculture in the city. His design model was based on the definition of ecology, which deals with the relations between the organism and their environment. This view places the emphasis on the relation between parts of the city. So we spoke about relationships, processes. So this kind of phrases that going to go with us in all this presentation. So the relation between the parts of the city rather than merely on each single separate part of the city. So for him, the city is composed of basic unit of what Hilbersheimer called settlement unit that are connected to the main transportation system by industrial area. According to Hilbersheimer, the settlement unit is urban, social, and productive basic unit, which is limited in size and contains all the necessary elements of city. So it's a semi-autonomous system, and it's we adapt this concept for our superblock. These settlements units are determined by the landscape, topography, geography, natural resources, use of land, and they are varied in size accordingly. So on the other hand, Soleri expanded the definition of ecology. For him, architecture and ecology are 2 parts of the same entity. He proposed the name arcology as combination of 2 words of architecture and ecology, which describes the city as integrated organism or self-contained system interacting with nature. So he proposed a compact model, three-dimensional form that provide a lean alternative to the urban sprawl city that was very familiar in the States, then the States. Slaurellin hypothesis is essentially the consumption efficiency of resources by society without destroying the ecological system. So this is a very strong and very, I think, key element and principles in ecological thinking. For Slaurellin, ecological systems are considered as models of how architecture and cities should be built. He suggested a holistic thinking that adopt a cross-disciplinary approach, including architecture, biology, urban design, and ecology. And based on these two analyses, I have seen Hilbert Simon and Slaurellin ideas regarding the ecological approach, the ecological thinking, the ecological intelligence. If we couple them with the latest computational advancement that we have today, I saw this as a potential for a novel design approach to the architecture and to the architecture of the city. So their ecological approach to design led me to the second domain of investigation, which is ecology. And scientifically, it's known that the definition of ecology is the study of the interaction between organisms, which is the biological system, how you see in the slides, and their environment, which is the physical system. Based on this definition, the function of the ecological thinking is to divide and understand the interaction and relationships. So when we're designing artifact, if it's a building or superblock or a city, so understanding the interaction within this artifact with its environment, it's, I think, the foundation of the ecological thinking for this artifact. This interaction form what is called, scientifically, it's called ecosystem. The ecosystem is the interaction between all of these elements. And within the ecosystem, there are continuous flux of material, energy, information in an interactive open system. In order to understand and analyze the function, performance, and productivity of an ecosystem, it required applying mathematical and computational method, namely computational ecology. Ecology, when it started in 1892, it was descriptive science. They draw and they classify the plants and the animals. And in the 40s of last century, it started with to compute by mathematical models to compute this interaction. And ecology moved from descriptive to mathematical modeling and the quantitative thing. And I believe that architecture one day will move from form and style to modeling and processes and mathematical processes. And this is what I'm looking for. So I will briefly will not say much about this. Computational ecology deals with the mathematical models which assess to understand the interaction and behavior of the ecosystem. Basically, the models describe the processes of material, energy, and information transfer within the ecosystem. As this slide shows, system thinkers argue that systems and their processes can be described by hydraulic metaphor diagram, which the pool or the stock, it's called in their language, represents that current state of the system. And any change of the stock size implies flows. The importance of these flows that they are the basis for decision and action in the system. And actually they act as the regulations and adaptation variables. So this is like a brief definition of computational ecology, how system thinkers think about it. Based on these principles, coupled with the advances of computers technology in the 1960s, led to the development of computational method, namely system dynamic modeling by the American scientist J. Forrester. For example, we can see in this slide his system dynamic model for the whole world as an ecosystem, which describes the flux of material, energy, and information, I mentioned before. He mapped the mathematical calculation and equation behind the interaction and the flows of the system. So actually, this method proved to be very useful in many disciplines. Actually, I decided to apply it in my research to simulate urban and ecological system, to adapt it from the system dynamics. So we spoke about ecology, about urban, about computation, and we formulate by this is the theoretical foundation, and this is the key principles. We define the city as a complex system. We use it as ecosystem and system dynamic modeling. We take the ecosystem from the ecology concept and the system dynamic modeling from the computation. We integrate all of these three domains together, overlap them with the principles that it's related to the design experiments. The next stage of the research was, it focuses on the formation of the computational design model. And this slide is very important because I should summarize what I have said until now. As can seen in this slide, it's composed of two linked models that were together, work together and exchange data to simulate urban system, the dynamic of the urban system, what I showed before, all of this computational ecology and the dynamic system, that we can understand the interaction by numbers, by describe them and predict their behavior, and then to generate their morphology by design model. So we combine this together to create what we call computational design model. The first model, what is called the system dynamic, what you see on the left, is responsible for the behavior simulation. And the second model, the evolutionary computational design on the right, is responsible for morphology generation. Both models are widely used in many disciplines and have proved to be very useful, again, like this. And to the best of my knowledge, it was the first time that they have been combined in one integrated computational design model, which can be seen as the novelty of and significance of this research. So briefly, the first model, the system dynamic, mathematically formalizes the structure and behavior of the system. In this slide, we can see a model of integrated complex system, which is composed of subsystems, the population growth system, agriculture production system, consumption system, harvesting system, and the solar energy system. All these subsystems interact together to simulate the behavior of the main system, the big system. So the model generates numerical data regarding the functionality, productivity, and the thresholds of the system. When it's collapsed, when it's behave like, we call it an ecosystem that it's functioning, and when it's reach its threshold, it's collapsed and stop functioning. So the resulting outcome of this simulation or in these models of the dynamic system were transferred as design objectives and informed the evolutionary design model, and the evolutionary design model, according to this, generate the morphology. So in this slide, I'm showing the evolutionary design model that generate the morphology. It's the second model. It's actually biologically inspired algorithm, which is a method to solve multi-objective optimization problem. If we define the city as a multi-objective optimization problem, as this algorithm could be useful. In multi-objective optimization, the task to find one solution that satisfies all the objectives is difficult, I think also impossible. And the search focuses on establishing a set of visible solutions. So as we can see in this slide, the algorithm uses two separate spaces, namely search space and solution space. If you see it down at the bottom of the slide, the search space is on the left, the solution space on the right. So In this respect, the algorithm mimic the survival of the fittest process in natural ecosystem. On the left side, there is the search space, which is the coded solution, or in we call it the genotype. On the right side, there is a solution space, which is the space of the actual solution or the phenotype. The model is designed to search for a set of solutions, as I said, and it's generate, in this case, in the superblock, is generate surfaces, morphology in relation to the system behavior extracted from the system dynamic model. I will explain it later now. So following the formation of the model, it was necessary to define the environmental context in order to carry out and to do the experiments. I choose the Mediterranean, which represent an ecological sensitive area. And then 3 ecological systems were selected to be examined. It's water, energy, and agriculture, which are expected to experience a negative impact in this region. Then I identified the scale of the urban system, which I call the superblock. Actually, the superblock, I think it has no limits for me, but here I choose it to be 1 square kilometers because it's the same size as the minimal special unit of climate modeling and simulation. And it's become relevant, so I can bring the data of the climate. So in order to couple it to predictions of climate which are available, that's the only reason why I say 1 square kilometer, but it's can, like carpet, it can be extended through the landscape. So it's a climatic logic scale, and it's a dynamical model that can be used to predict. To examine the model, it was applied in 2-stage design experiment. The first set of experiment simulate the 3 independent ecological systems separately. Based on this experiment, we see in the slide above, they were separately examined. After that, based on this, a second set of experiment at the bottom was carried out to explore integration of these 3 subsystems into one integrated system. So the outcome were special surfaces covering the superblock, responding to the function and performance of the ecological system. The surface perform as inhabited surface that can sustain and support living being. For example, in the water system experiment, the model generated surface that act as a landform, allowing the creation of ponds for rainwater collection. Morphologically, the surface were driven not only by system dynamic behavior, the computational ecological system model, but also by spatial design objective. Such we define for the algorithm that we want minimal water surface and maximum shorelines as a design objective. In the case of energy, generated surface act as a skyline that harvests energy and inhabit population. The energy flows and its production were limited to the area of the skyline surface. Morphologically, all the solution developed a skyline that inclined to the south to maximize its exposure to the sun. Moving on to the agriculture system, it developed and generated a terraced land surface for effective farming of different types of crops. The terraced landform resembles the traditional Mediterranean agriculture system, where crops with less need for water were allocated to higher levels terraces, and actually vice versa. So now let's turn to the next set of experiment, the integrated system. In this case, the collective interaction of the subsystem determined the overall behavior and morphology of the system. The resulting outcomes show that the population growth is determined by the availability of resources. This is what I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation about the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity limit the growth, and we have to start to deal with this concept of growth limits. It's important. We can't grow until endless. which can be defined as the carrying capacity of the superblock. Indeed, one of the interesting observations was related to the system flexibility. When adding more subsystem to the superblock, the flexibility in each subsystem decrease and the complexity increase. For example, the agriculture system reduced the production of the energy system because they were competing between themselves for the same production space. Both of them want to have to be inclined to the south. So therefore, the design required a compromise between the productivity of the subsystems. Okay, now the question, fine, all of this. So how this productive service can be employed in design? Okay, we did it, okay. How was design? Basically the aim of this, the resulting morphologies, or we'll speak, these surfaces, let's call them morphologies or productive surfaces, is to utilize them as a spatial organizer and distributor of the urban system. So it's like a master planning terminology that we use today. So it's another type of how to plan and to master planning the urban settlement. Essentially, it acts in two ways. First, it sets the spatial boundaries and constraints of the morphology of the inhabited spaces. And secondly, it's provide a point cloud of multidimensional data space of numerical and vector data related to water, energy, and agriculture. So each point contains the expected quality of the design possibilities, which in fact, in context of the deterministic approach, leave the design open to further development. For example, the data of the water surface inform the distribution, shape, deepness, and the size of the water ponds. The same with the energy system. The data inform the potential of the solar energy production in each point and the minimal sun exposure. This is the energy scape. It's primarily using incoming solar radiation on solar panels, but this can be mapped very accurately according to the existing climate models. It's mathematics, it's relationships. In the case of the agricultural terraces, crops types and their forms were driven by the generated data, and their three-dimensional distribution was determined by the orientation and declination vector of each point. Now, if we try to zoom in, trying to explore the initial implementation of the Datascape, in the design development process, basically it starts with productive surfaces generation, what we see in the slide. Then the surfaces are translated to point cloud, what we see here. And after this, the data inform the architecture material, such as topographical surfaces, ponds, or agriculture terraces, inhabited buildings, and actually it can be followed further development, such as network analysis and public spaces distribution. And if we zoom out based on this primary design, we can see the initial diagrammatic manifestation of the ecological superblock. It's not a design for a set of buildings, but it's the maximum that 1 square kilometer can support, and in the right spatial relationship to be a ecology and natural system with that same square kilometer. In fact, the significance of this model is what we don't see and what stands behind this morphology. And this is the data cloud that generated by the system, what we see here, which inform each point to how we said the terrace area, volume, maximum density, height, water, maximum building footprint, solar panel area, among other. So again, sorry that I'm repeating this. It's all about mathematical relationship. Okay, so I will finish with this research, and now I believe I still have time, no? Or are we finished? We still have time?
Yeah, we will have time for questions and answers as well.
Okay. Now I will move on to the next two professional projects developed in our office. The first project is the Longyang Cultural Center in Beijing, commissioned by Longyang Station Corporation in Beijing. Basically, it's located in an abundant complex of former industrial area in Beijing. This company is specialized in transforming and conversion abandoned industrial area into cultural center. Actually, China now is undergoing a process of regeneration and upgrading all of this industrial heritage. The project consists of 6 warehouses adjacent to a park, and there was a railway crossing the complex, how you see in the right image here. So this is how the warehouse looks like. The brick and the materiality are interesting, and we thought about the idea of how we could introduce the park and how would you develop a design that function as an ecological device that is integrated into the existing local ecosystem. This is the wider context. Where are 2 canals in the area? Thing that we like to do so much is developing what is called the Ndvi Map, which analyzes remotely, often from space platform satellite. It's analyzed the existing of live green vegetation in the area. So almost there, everything is dead according to this map. So actually, all the area undergoing through development and renovation. Through our research, we discovered all of these creative and cultural activities that are happening already there. So this slide shows the water canals on the side and its ecological impact. Following the principles of integrated architecture in the ecological system, we try to develop the project as ecological device that contribute to the healing of the environment. How we do it? Our initial idea was to create a surface, big roof that perform as an ecological device that will try to improve the environmental condition in the site. Architecture as a healing tool. So we used agent-based algorithm in order to understand and simulate the circulation system potentiality that will reinforce a certain movement in the site. In this case, there was very important axis which is crossing the site from north to south, and then we have these 2 corridors that cross inside the warehouses. So the agent-based algorithm generates schemes that responds to this condition. So the surface, the roof is actually the central element in this project, and it functions as environmental device. For that, we propose the material system of titanium dioxide, building material that when it comes into contact with light, it reacts with, I think, the nitrogen dioxide in the air, converting the pollutant to a salt that can easily be washed away. So exposure to light and collecting the water become parameters in the generating the roof morphology. So the whole design scheme was about to introduce the sunlight in the winter in order to maximize the energy capture and to perform with the titanium dioxide material system. So I will show a 2 minutes movie that. So in this one, in this small short video, I will show the GA that the algorithm that we developed that based on the genetic algorithm and evolution algorithm in order to find the most satisfying morphology of the thousands of solutions that we generate here. What we see here, how the computation model distributed the material at each cell in the roof surface. The algorithm allocate material according to the data and inform each point in the roof. It could be solid, glass, vegetation, or solar panel, titanium dioxide. The cells combined together orchestrated this ecological performance of the roof as environmental design. And this is everything done computationally here by computer. And then we can see the animation of the generation of see it now of the solution by using this multi-objective optimization algorithm. So the morphology, we see it here now, the morphology of the roof emerged from the evolutionary process of genetic algorithm. This is the final morphology that was selected as a preferred and satisfying solution. The curvature of the anchors of the surface are resulted of the design objective that were assigned to the algorithm. So it's not imagination of fantasy of star architect that come with his impressive forms and shapes and want to impose them on the project. So here can we see two layers of surfaces generated by GA and the circulation generated by agent-based algorithm. They interact together. This project, by the way, was awarded the most innovative design in the Design Week in Beijing in 2019. If we, sorry, how we can move on now? All the time, this is the issue with the videos. Okay, now this slide shows the analysis of the selected solutions, because we generated thousands of solutions for the roof. We developed another algorithm that can select for us what we call satisfied solution, not optimized, because we mentioned that with multi-objective optimization, you can't get an optimized one solution. So this is the set of solution we try to examine and to analyze. We choose from this three for a deeper examination. And after that, we choose the most satisfying solution for us as a designer. This image shows some view of the quality of the roof, another view from the park. And now I will move to the second and the last project. We still have time.
Sorry. We may have to wrap it up in the next minute or two to give time for questions.
Okay. I'll make it very fast then. This is the second professional project, the Sea of Galilee Hotel and Resort. This site located in what is called the Sea of Galilee from the Bible is very famous. And we're trying to, the design stem from understanding the regional site condition, both in terms of ecology, topography, and climate. It was followed by analysis of closer context, environmental, cultural, geographical, use of land, the ecological simulation of water, wind, and sun radiation revealed pattern of water flows and wind corridors on the site. This helped tunnels the prevailing winds from west to during the summer and block this cooler wind coming from the north in the winter. So the landform pattern and line that emerged from the simulation become the driver, organizer, distributor of the project morphology. So the function and the different uses were organized along several lines, corridors that follow the natural flow water. This then complemented with the idea of turning these waters corridors into artificial topographies that host both planting and uses in the higher area. I will move this to achieve, okay. Integrating all the ecological system, including landform and water and wind dynamics, agriculture production, and artificial artifacts, what is called the hotel, it was, compose a dynamic productive ecosystem that determine the design morphology. So some images of the final design with this is I will finish. The slide shows the site plan. It's showing the blending of the nature and the artificial. Zoom in view showing some details of what I call neo-nature. Another view from the east, plantation, water, building. A view from the north, the limits are blurred between the exterior and the interior. The calm water, beach activity and bird watching, agriculture production, and the view to the lake. Interior space and its relation to the exterior, interior-exterior relationship. Here we can see pavilion with different functions that were distributed along the water and the wind corridors. So ending by this slide, just a quick summary. I would like to emphasize some key points of this presentation. First, the design and the design research that I presented today to you is actually try to demonstrate the applicability of the ecological thinking by outsizing ecological intelligence and principles in the architecture design. And another important point is the contribution of the ecological thinking to the paradigm shift in the architecture design and in design in general, which shift the focus from the concept of form and objects to the concept of dynamic processes and computation. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for the listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayman. I'm sure our students will have some questions after that super engaging, very detailed and very technical approach and response to the climate crisis. Whilst people are kind of preparing their questions and digesting, I'd really like to start off because I thought it was super interesting, this idea of relations and processes, which you talked about a lot, and of course devising a system which kind of responds to a lot of the ecological crisis is that we're living through. Yeah. And my question, we talked a bit about, you know, kind of purely mathematical approach. Mine is more related to kind of existing political systems and also existing cultures and how they perhaps kind of fit into or exist or respond within this kind of technical regime. And I'm sort of thinking in the context of the kind of recent and ongoing farmers' protests in India. And I would say maybe within the kind of regime of data, there's questions around political power, and there's a lot of healthy skepticism, I would say, around who controls the data and to what extent and to what end. So I kind of have a question around how existing political systems sort of exist within your projections and ideas of how to like systemize and bring together a kind of more stable ecological system.
Yeah, first of all, I think the approach here is not technical approach. It's not mathematical approach, but it's more systematic approach. And it's a system thinking approach. And I think that's right that I just demonstrate here the applicability of 3 systems. But actually, we can add more systems. It could be cultural, economic, and political. And in a system thinking approach, we can model also this system. And we can integrate them in the wider model. And I think this will be very interesting for further research to take this system and to say, okay, now we're going to model a political system and we put it and then simulate it. And then maybe we'll have another morphology or economical one or even cultural one. For example, if I give you in Middle Eastern cities in the Middle Ages, or I don't even know, there's culturally, there's a system of 3 levels of privacy. The city, the neighborhood, the courtyard inside, and this. If you can introduce this as a system, also this will affect the morphology, and they will be treated off between them. I think the approach here, it's suggesting and argue that we have to deal with complex system, not in a conventional way of trying to improve. Okay, we have problem, we have cause, we have effect, we solve it. It doesn't work like that. With system problems, you need a complex system approach to do it. That's what I think.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ayman? Please raise your hand or just unmute your microphone.
Hello.
There we go. So we'll start with Girish and then Tao after.
Yeah. Hi, am I audible?
Hello?
Yeah, hi. So basically, presentation was really nice. I really liked the graphics and everything about it. And again, everything was very intellectual. A good research was, consist of that part. The thing is, this example which you shown, the last 2 examples as in the practice thing, have you ever faced have you ever got a project which was having a higher density, or the tall project where you can implement all these things vertically?
Yeah. Actually, we won a competition in Singapore by Innovate UK, a government agency here. And I thought to present it today, but it's 1 square kilometer with 40,000 people with a production of agriculture in the bay in Singapore. And we presented for the government there, and they were very happy and they wanted to implement these models as a master planning for designer to try to use it later on. If you are interested in this, you can contact me and I can show you this project. It's very interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll do that thing. And the second thing is about in the research, are there any particular softwares or plugins which you utilize?
This is an important question, and I want all the students to be aware of these things. Even in my studios that I'm teaching now in Bethlehem and Jerusalem and everything, we insist to use the available technology like laptops and open source softwares. And when we conducting this experiment, we register what software, what laptop, what this. All what is done here is with open source softwares. The system dynamic modeling, also that there's a very sophisticated software and very expensive, but you can find also an open source ones that you can model any system, and actually you can learn how to system dynamic modeling very fast. There's tutorial for that, and we use the Grasshopper plugin for the generative algorithm, and this is the only softwares.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think Tao had a question. Yes, Tao.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Yeah. As you mentioned, you say it's this is a systematic approach, not a technical approach. So, how do you think in your system? How do you think like continuous elements, some of the local cultural elements, because from your final production of 2 projects, I just thought it's a little bit special from the around the environment. So my question is why this creates like those final feeling or final.
What's the question?
The question is why, just for me, is why, so what elements or why this creates like those feeling is a little bit special, a little bit different with around the environment.
You speaking about the final morphology of the design?
Yeah, because as you mentioned,
it's outcome of the process. So morphology in nature, for example, it's not coming from inspiration of somebody who created. The morphology in nature, if it's plants or animals or human, it's a result of metabolism and the processes and energy transfer. In architecture, they think differently. They sleep in the night, they have inspiration, they have 6 p.m. they make sketches, and they tell a story about that. They convince everybody's happy. It's a fashion. After 2 years, nobody listen about this. All the time I ask, okay, you make a morphology, you have to tell us if it's useful for what we do it, if it can contribute to healing of this environment. Look, we are going to distinct according to the World Bank and all this climate thing. So it's not problem of nature. Nature knows to survive after us. It's an existential problem, and we sitting and we have inspiration and philosophy and Derrida and Foucault and all of these things. Very nice. Okay, we tell stories, but I don't see any evidence with these stories.
Okay. So in your system, you focus on the ecological system, ecological environment. So, what do you want to local continuously element you want to emphasize?
But I think First of all, with this approach, ecological thinking or intelligence approach to design, there's no generic project. There's no generic project because you take the parameters of the context of the site, of the environment, and you as a designer, you will decide which system you want to include. You want to include the political one, it's important for you maybe more than this, and then you give it weight more, or the cultural system, if it exists. In some places, there's no cultural parameters that will affect morphology. In other societies or communities, you need this thing. So I think what is interesting about this model that it's mutable and you can expand it and add more system and more system and more system. So if we define culture as a system, and it's actually a system, there's a wide agreement about this, that culture is systems, and you can even separate it. You know, system of education, you can also integrate it as part of the design, and then you will see how it will affect morphology. For example, if you, one of the experiments that we conducted, we put the schools inside the superblock, but we run simulation for 100 years, and we see how the population grow. In some point, there's no children there, and the schools are empty. Then we change them to production of agriculture or industry. So you know this according to the system, you know how to decide about the morphology. When you interrelate, look, everybody claimed that, look, we have a system approach to deal with the architecture, the sustainability claim that, even in Masdar City, in Abu Dhabi and everywhere. But if we examine this deeply, you see that they're dealing with each system separately. They are not related, not connected. And they say, okay, we're improving, it's sustainable, it's working well. And I think it's the wrong way to deal with the complex system problems.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just think the environment is very complex. So how we simplify? So what way?
Okay. You know the say that say all models are wrong. All models are wrong. So this model also is wrong. Why are all models wrong? Because modeling is simplifying of a real system, and actually we choose the elements that we think they are crucial to try to make some kind of simulation. So it also depends how you are accurate with your model. It doesn't mean that model this represents really the reality. So it's all of this modeling discipline. I think it's a field that exists with his own concepts and things. We as a designer, we're trying to take benefits from the other disciplines and to bring it to us. I don't expect that you to be ecologist or a computer scientist or something, but how we can take benefits from principles that was developed there that can come in useful way in our design process.
Okay, thank you. Got it.
Thank you, Tao. We have time for one more question. Does anyone have a question for Ayman?
This is my second year that I'm giving a lecture in this place. It's become like a habit now with Manchester School of Architecture.
One more question. Anybody?
Can speak about politics, culture, whatever. No, yeah. Even not related to the to the lecture. Don't worry.
I have a question then about productive. The word productive. I suppose it's become kind of more of a dirty word in the age of the Anthropocene. Productivity.
And growth.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to, I suppose, why the use of that word, because I mean, take the lockdown, for example. Through the lens of the Anthropocene, this was an incredibly productive moment. Emissions came to a halt, and suddenly, kind of animals are reappropriating urban lands, and you can hear birds again and bird song. So I'm curious about how productive through which lens.
First, I love your question. It's a very beautiful question. Actually, also ecology, it's overused. Sustainability overused, and now as meaningless even. All of this. What I tried in my research to go to the terms in their scientific definition. And we when say productivity in ecology, it's a very good thing. In the ecosystem productive, it's productive oxygen, air, it's productive water, it's productive, it's keep the ecosystem functioning. When it stops being productive, the ecosystem, the natural ecosystem, it's collapsed and died. It's the opposite from we know. We know some very famous architects now want growth and liberal and open and let the people innovate and destroy all the world just to serve their rich clients and build them very huge atriums and I don't know what. I think we have responsibility. We have, as an architect, we have to give solution. We have to be relevant. We are not relevant today as architects. We are not relevant. People don't care about us. So we have to give solution. Otherwise, who needs us?
Thank you, Eamon. Has anyone got one more question? Or we will draw it to a close there. Well, Eamon, thank you very much for an incredibly passionate and engaging lecture.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll be back again
I
in
hope
a
to
year's
see you
time.
physically soon.
Yeah.
Physically we'll meet soon, I hope.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for all the students. Next time, I would like to see their faces, not just round circles with letters down. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Okay, so we are back at 2 p.m. for the continuation of part 2 of our seminar series for the book chapter presentations. I don't know, Lucy, if you have anything else to add, otherwise we will draw this to a close.
Nothing from me.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll see you all at 2 then. Bye-bye.